Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is JohnJake Baseball on the mic here, man, coming at you with some more USBL action as we are actually here in the final month of this regular season. We got a good set of games. We have several games around the USBL that might have some significant importance in some of these USBL races around the league. So it's gonna be a good episode, man. So make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe if you do happen to be brand new. And how about this to start things off here? Brady Gustavo going deep to right center field. It's gonna be a ground rule double, and that's a great start for Baltimore. Great start for the Baltimore Stone Crabs, especially when you get multiple runners on base from Manny Machado, one of the best hitters in the USBL, who also happens to go ahead and do a RBI double himself. So that's how Baltimore gets the first run up on the board here, as Baltimore will open things up here. Not really wasting too much time here. Already getting a couple of runs here, in the bottom of the first inning, taking on honestly one of the worst teams in the USBL right now, the Nashville Blues. They have really struggled here in the second half of the season. 53-85 is their record so far. It's one of the worst records that we've seen this season, and it's a great opportunity for the Baltimore Stone Crabs as they're currently sitting in third place of the AL East right now. They are chasing, not only they're chasing the New York Knights, but in addition to chasing the New York Knights, they are also trying to chase down the Cleveland Rockers, who've also had a phenomenal season as well. And based off to the start that the Baltimore Stone Crabs have been up to, as Jonathan Walden does end up going ahead and hitting his 7th home run of the season, things are going pretty well overall. And meanwhile, Nashville Blues, not so much. They weren't even sellers at the trade day. They were still in the thick of things. But yeah, maybe in season 2, they might be a team that might be trading away some key pieces here, might be starting to rebuild here, because it has not gone well for them whatsoever. But, it's good to see a nice little moment there. Jared Exgoff does end up getting the strikeout on Pete Alonso in order to at least go ahead and end the inning. So, at least there wasn't that much damage done in that inning per se. But Manny Machado, he is on a mission to make sure his team makes it into the playoffs. Another home run for Manny Machado. It's his 30th one of the season. And now the Baltimore Stone Crabs, they go ahead, take a 5-0 lead here, and Pete Alonso will also be getting involved in the action as well. He's going to end up going ahead and getting a run, actually not a run necessarily, but going to be at least a double, the 20th double of the season for Pete Alonso. And Nashville Blues actually have to go to the bullpen here. Hoyt DeClan, who was recently called up. This is only his 5th appearance of the entire season so far. Young guys like him stepping up and making some things happen, able to get the strikeout here in order to end the inning. Clean things up and shut things down here for sure. You certainly like to see that. But, that being said, Nashville is still down 5-0, and we're already here in the top of the 9th inning. There's only 1 out left here, so it's very much possible that Nashville is going to end up being shut out, and that's been a problem for the Nashville Blues. It's not like they have a terrible pitching staff by any means or any stretch of the imagination, but they just have not been able to hit the baseball whatsoever, as Darryl Cooley does end up going ahead and at least break the shutout. They do at least, get that taken care of. They end up getting 1 run on the board, but if you're only scoring 1 run in a game, you're not going to win very many games in the USBL, and that's what Nashville found out, even though the pitching staff wasn't terrible. And that's what ended up happening, as Baltimore does end up winning this game. So last episode, I talked about the Cleveland Rockers and their chase for the divisional crown in the AL East. This is one way to get that job done, taking care of the Las Vegas Lounge Wizards. Ended up winning 15-7. It wasn't even as close as it originally was, as all of Las Vegas runs were in the 6th inning or later. This was a wrap from the very beginning. It was a great game overall for the Cleveland Rockers. Christian Vasquez, ended up with a great game, 3 for 5, 2 home runs and 3 ribbies, and Yanni Rios ends up with the win, only allowing 2 runs today. So let's go ahead and go down south to see if there is some more competitive games out there. And we do have a divisional matchup in our hands. We have the New Orleans Kings going on the road to take on the Jacksonville Suns in an NL East divisional matchup. And Jacksonville is one of those teams, like, they're not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. They're only 4 games under 500, but they don't necessarily do anything great. But again, this is one of the divisions that's probably one of the best top to down, as even the Charlotte Cougars, who are currently last place in the NL East, as the start of this episode, the Charlotte Cougars are a respectable team too. And New Orleans, they're certainly in the hunt. They might be one of those teams that, if they don't win the division away from the Philadelphia Patriots, they can certainly go to the wild card and make it to the inaugural USBL playoffs that way. But we got a 3-1 count here in the top of the first inning, as Rhys Hopkins is going to go deep down center field. It's going to get over the wall, and it's going to be a 2-run shot for Rhys Hoskins. It's the 28th home run of the season. And while Alex Minush can go ahead and get the strikeout, New Orleans does at least strike first here in the top of the first inning. They do end up taking a couple of runs. And we now take a look at this New Orleans pitcher, Mike Fanotsky, who has kind of struggled a little bit this season, has an ERA in the 6s, so certainly not ideal whatsoever. But I mean, it still has the New Orleans Kings in a position to have the first wild card if they can hang on here in this last month of the season. But I'm sure Jacksonville, even though they may not necessarily be in it necessarily, they're not eliminated, but it's a long shot that they'll make it into the playoffs at this point. Jacksonville really trying to play a spoiler here, so let's see if they can do that here, as Rick Thomas is going to end up doing some window shopping. He just ends up looking. So now there's 2 outs here as Tyler O'Neill tries to bring Starling Marte home, and it's going to be a double that ends up hitting the wall. And the Jacksonville Suns do indeed respond here. They do end up getting a run on the board here. We'll see if they can follow that up here in the bottom of the 3rd inning, as Wilson Ramos comes to the plate with runners on first and second, as we got a little bit of a wild pitch and a double steal by the Jacksonville Suns. It is going to be considered a pass ball, so that technically doesn't count as a stolen base. But now that's huge, getting runners on second and third base, as even though runner's going to be actually the batter is going to be out, that is still going to go ahead and bring a run in for the Jacksonville Suns. So some nice optimistic base running that I really like to see there, and it helps the Jacksonville Suns tie this game up, even though probably could have gone maybe one more run. But hey, we got ourselves a pretty competitive game here thus far. Things are still all tied up at 2 apiece, as Trent Forden comes to the game now for the Jacksonville Suns. He makes his 3rd appearance. He was also somebody that was called up, in the aftermath of the USBL trade day. And Trent Forden, how about a welcome to the USBL movement, as his first 2 appearances went pretty good, but spoiler alert, it did not go well here for Trent Forden whatsoever, giving up 3 runs in the only inning that he ended up pitching in the first place. Gives the New Orleans Kings a lead, but that being said, Jacksonville is certainly not going to give up whatsoever, as Tyler O'Neill, one of the fastest people in the USBL, ends up getting a double. As Dylan Tate now comes up and for his 48th appearance of the season, trying to clean things up a little bit here and at least get the runner out on first. Tyler O'Neill doesn't end up moving anywhere, but it still brings a run in for the Jacksonville Suns. We'll see if Brett Gardner, though, can tie things up here for this Jacksonville baseball team, as Brett Gardner, he's going to hit this one to left field, and Tyler O'Neill, we already knew, got that elite speed. Brett Gardner with an RBI single, and Dylan Tate could not get the hold. So there was a runner on second and third. Both those runners still end up going home anyways, but Jacksonville cannot get the tying run, though, and they'll still be down by 1 run, as we'll actually cut it out to the 9th inning. Still the same score here, as the New Orleans Kings are looking for some good old-fashioned insurance. Big insurance guy over here, man. We'll see if New Orleans can tack on at least one more run before the end of this inning, as Justin Turner is looking for just that, as a base hit out in the center field does end up getting an insurance run for the New Orleans Kings. They don't add any more runs, but they at least add a little bit more cushion in case we see a little bit of pushing from the Jacksonville Suns. As James Karinchak comes to the game now, he'll look for his 42nd save of the season. We'll see if he can get Starling Marte out here, as Marte gives us a little bit of a ride, but it's going to fall well short of the warning track. And the New Orleans Kings will try to keep alive in the NL East divisional race, as New Orleans ends up winning 6-4 against the Jacksonville Suns, taking care of business right there. So we do end up seeing the New Orleans Kings, who are second place in the NL East, win. We'll see if the Philadelphia Patriots can go ahead and do the same thing here, as they come in 81-56 so far. So they have at least a 5-game lead over the New Orleans Kings for the right to be champions of the NL East. As we have a little bit of a milestone watch here as well. Bryce Harper looking for his 100th RBI of the season. How about that for a no-doubter here, as the solo shot not only gives Bryce Harper his 30th home run, but it also helps provide the 100th RBI of the season for Bryce Harper. He's been having a great season, and being on one of the best teams in the USBL, he might end up winning the MVP award, at least for the National League. As we'll go ahead and see Jameson Taillon come up on the mound here, taking on this Milwaukee Bears lineup, who they have a really bad record. They're 62-77. They honestly didn't sell because the NL Central just does not have a top flight team like I thought they were going to have. Indianapolis and Aurora were both off to some pretty good starts overall, but I mean, it's not like they don't do anything terrible. They have just had some bad luck in terms of losing a bunch of close games. That's really been the MO for the Milwaukee Bears this season. So we'll see if they can put it all together and maybe pull an upset over Philadelphia. Play a little bit spoiler because they are out of it in this point. And right now, things aren't going too terribly bad. Things are still all tied up at 1. As Lorenzo Cain will look to try to at least go ahead and try to break the tie. And right now, this ball actually looks pretty good. It ends up getting over the wall. So Lorenzo Cain gets himself a grand rule double. So now we have Lorenzo Cain in scoring position. Joey Wendell comes up for the Milwaukee Bears. He's going to end up bringing in Lorenzo Cain home. He slides in, and the throw not being in time. The Milwaukee Bears might be on to something here. They end up taking a 2-1 lead. And they might not be done yet, as Alex Bregman's at the plate. But look at this. Joey Wendell tried to steal. He was looking to try to get himself into scoring position, but that was just not even close. And the inning ends up stalling out after that. So Milwaukee kind of leaving somebody on bag, and you can't do that against this Philadelphia team. They are just simply too talented to not make mistakes and still end up winning the game, right? So as Bryce Harper, proving that point exactly, ends up hitting another home run, his second home run of the day. And now this Philadelphia Patriots squad, they suddenly have the lead right back. Jesus Aguilar might extend it further as he drives one deep into right center field. It drives in another run, and Jesus, he's not even a fast guy. He's one of the slower players in the USBL right now. He ends up getting the second base. So there's yet another person in a scoring position. But Justin Upton will not be able to go ahead and bring him home, as he ends up striking out swinging. But the Philadelphia Patriots, to their defense, they do at least go ahead and bring in a few runs. We'll see how this Milwaukee Bears team responds here, as Alex Bregman does end up getting his very first hit of the day. It's only a single. We usually don't see singles here, in the highlights, but big moment for Alex Bregman. He's been feeling himself going into the end of August, moving into September. A 17-game hitting streak and it's been helping this Milwaukee Bears squad out, as literally the next batter that comes in is able to bring Alex Bregman home. So now the deficit is cut in half. Nice job by Alex Dickerson that helped the Milwaukee team respond, but we also need to see some clean innings here as well. Don't know if that's possible given the talent that is on this Philadelphia Patriots roster right now, as Jose Peraza does end up getting his 18th steal of the season. And listen, man, you get some stolen bases, you get the pitcher a little bit rattled, it's going to end up paying off in the long run, as that base hit does end up bringing another run home for Philadelphia, and is back up to a 2-run lead, even with the strikeout, with 2 outs left in the 7th inning. No more runs are scored. So now the Philadelphia Patriots are back up on the field with a 2-run lead, with Wendy Peralta out there pitching for Philadelphia. Let's see if they can get a clean inning out of him, and got the strikeout to start the inning, and they're in a good spot right now, facing the bottom of the order. You absolutely love to see that, as Wendy Peralta ends up getting 2 strikeouts in a row, but a puzzling move by Philadelphia, as Trevor May is going to end up coming into the game. I thought Wendy Peralta was doing a really good job. I'm really surprised, actually, that they would take him out. And what does Trevor May do? Gets it to a point where they load up the bases. And, man, you want to talk about a swinging change that changes the momentum of the game completely. How about that? Joey Wendell with a grand slam. So now Philadelphia has to go back to the mound because Trevor May was not working whatsoever. George Horariez ends up coming into the game to try to clean things up. He does shut things down, but really confusing decision there to take out Wendy Peralta when he strikes out 2 of his batters. But I don't know, man. I'm only a commentator, man. I only get paid to do that. I don't sit back and do coaching for any of these USBL squads, even though I'm probably better than half the teams in the USBL when it comes to actually managing a proper baseball team. But that's just me, though. We'll go ahead and cut to the top of the 9th inning, as Philadelphia does need a rally in order to at least, make things a little bit interesting. Otherwise, Milwaukee will actually be able to pull the upset. But hang on here. We have a double that ends up bringing in 2 runs, and that's absolutely huge for Alex Rosario, as that does end up tying the game for the Philadelphia Patriots. And what gets more interesting too here is that Milwaukee cannot respond, so we're actually going to go ahead here, and we are going to see some extra innings action. 9 innings was not enough for either team to distance themselves, so we're going to go ahead and move to the 11th inning here, where Richard Bleeber comes into the game here. Kristen Robinson, who came in as a pinch runner earlier, he does end up striking out in his only USBL at-bat of the day. But Jose Peraza, on the other hand, he won't strike out. He actually hits this one down left field. They were looking for the shift on the opposite side, and that's just not going to happen for him whatsoever. Huge play for Jesus Peraza, getting the 13th double of the season. Is Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's had some big moments this season, but 278, 18 homers, and 76 RBIs. He's not too bad. Still growing into that role, trying to meet the expectations that his father had placed upon him with the long playing career that he had over the MLB. We'll see if Vlad Guerrero Jr. can do that here in the USBL, as this one is hit to right field. As if it stays fair, it does! And look at that. Philadelphia now has the lead. Vlad Guerrero Jr. now with his 77th RBI of the season. And they might not be done yet here either, as Willie Castro comes into the game now. He's 1 for 5. He's had plenty of at-bats thus far. How about this? Another deep shot to right field. That gets over the wall. It's not a ground rule double, but it does end up with the same result, though, as Willie Castro does find a way to edge out the ability to get to second base, as Brad Peacock has to come in for the Milwaukee Bears to try to make sure they can go ahead and clean things up, and will do just that as DJ LeMahieu is going to end up doing some window shopping. He just strikes out looking. And now Alejandro Cepeda, who's looking for his 25th save of the season. We'll see if he can get it done. James McCann trying to play hero. Gets a nice hit on the baseball, but no problem for the center fielder whatsoever. So Milwaukee Brewers, gotta give him credit. They did end up putting up a pretty good fight overall, but the Philadelphia Patriots will end up winning this game by a final score of 9-7, with Bryce Harper being named player of the game. So now we'll go on to another NL Central team that's kind of out of it with the wild card, but could very well stay alive in the divisional race, is the Memphis Bobcats. They've been a little bit of a surprise thus far, as Huskar Yanoa, who's making his second start of the season, will take on Spencer Turnbull and the LA Saints, who are looking to solidify themselves as the champions of the NL West. We'll see if they can go ahead and get the job done or not. As we go ahead and go into the top of the fourth inning, both starting pitchers have been doing a really good job until Freddie Freeman decides to finally break the silence. Takes this one, no doubter as well. Everyone in the infield knew that was going to be a home run, as Noah Ramirez will eventually come into the game here. We are now in the bottom of the sixth inning, and Memphis still has not scored yet. They have struggled a little bit here, even though they have, Chris Bryant and Giancarlo Stanton on this squad. So they shouldn't be struggling as much as offense as they have been. But Chris Bryant, he's going to get a nice shot into right field, and that's gone like a girl in a country song as well. The 29th home run of the season. And speaking of John Stanton, well, Stanton has struggled a little bit. Another strikeout for him. But, I mean, gotta give credit to Memphis. They've, really improved as the season gone on. They came into this season as the worst rated USBL club. Throughout the league, they were 30th out of 30th teams, going into this season. The fact that they're still competitive, they're still, having an opportunity to go ahead and play for a potential division championship. Now, granted, like I said before, the division is kind of terrible compared to other divisions in the USBL, and I'll kind of talk about that, give a little standings update when we get closer to the end of this episode. But hey, Memphis is still in it, man, as Jose De Leon, might end up getting out of this top of the seventh inning, or give up another home run. That's a thing too, trying to hype up this Memphis Bobcats squad, and what they end up doing, giving up 2 home runs in a row. Of course, look at me jinxing this Memphis squad, man, as Patrick Dyer, he's going to come to the plate. He's going to rip out at least another base hit too. This could end up messing around and becoming a double. It's going to be close, but look at that, thrown out by a mile. Just not great base run, trying to be a little bit too aggressive there, as Memphis finds themselves down by 3 runs all of a sudden. We'll see if they can go ahead and try and rally here, as Dom T. Williams ends up getting his very first hit of the game. This is going to at least move the runners over to third, potentially. It's going to be close, but Memphis does get runners into scoring position, courtesy of Dom T. Williams. The 13th double of the season for him, as Nick Goody comes to the game now for the LA Saints. 5-3 so far. 71st appearance of the season too, as this one is hit into center field. It's at least a fly out, but it will also bring a run for Memphis. So it really is only a 1-run game, but that is only as close as they're going to get, as LA will still find a way to win this game 5-4. Speaking of the NL Central, though, we'll take a look at an NL Central matchup between the Louisville Colonials and the Indianapolis Indians. And guys, I've been trying to tell you guys, if the NL Central being bad, I was not kidding. The Indianapolis Indians, they're on top of the NL Central right now, 72-68. So even though Louisville is a few games under 5, they're 5 games under 500, they're only 4.5 back from the Indianapolis Indians for the division lead. So, even though Louisville hasn't had the best of seasons, they are still in this thing. They are far from done, by any stretch of the imagination. So this game all of a sudden, you know, showing some significance, even though if these teams were in any other division, they probably would not be in the playoff conversation right now. But here we are. Indianapolis will end up getting the very first run of this ball game with a single that will end up bringing in Jose Altuve. That is the first run scored as Matt Kepler tries to keep the good vibes going for Indianapolis and ends up striking out there. But Eric Hosmer does end up bringing in Jose Altuve in, you know, to end this first inning. And they will end up striking first here as Francisco Lindor, he's going to try to extend things for the Louisville Colonials right now. This is actually going to make it all the way out to the wall. It's going to end up being a double. So now Francisco Lindor provides the Indianapolis Indians with another runner out in scoring position. Matt Kepler trying to play the redemption role. He struck out in his first at bat in the bottom of the first. Ends up bringing in Francisco Lindor home and ends up getting a double as well. Took advantage of the fact that the Louisville Colonials trying to throw out Francisco Lindor at home, able to extend that out to a two-bagger, even though probably is just a single at most. And speaking of this Indianapolis squad, how about another double here once again, as we have yet another one for Andrew McCutchen. And it's been quite a struggle for Josh Lindbaum so far. That manager has to come out here, talk to his pitcher a little bit, make sure everything is good, make sure everything is all right. And I don't know exactly what they were talking about, but whatever they did worked, as French Shaver ends up striking out first batter after the conversation on the mound. So the manager talk did end up working to stop the bleeding, but now we need to see the Louisville Colonials go ahead, get some runs themselves. And Charlie Blackmon, one of the better contact hitters in the USBL, he's going to come through in the clutch. He's going to end up bringing in a couple of runs for the Louisville Colonials, and they're right back in this game, man. It is only a one-run difference here as of right now, as now George Polanco trying to do some things here as well, as we see a runner trying to steal second. And wow, you want to talk about somebody that was gone, you know, real quick. David Peralta tried to steal second base, but it did not work whatsoever, and ended up stalling the inning for Louisville. That was the tying run, by the way, that Louisville had out there on first base that just got thrown out. Hopefully that doesn't end up being the difference, but I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case, as we go ahead and get into this bottom of the fourth inning, and Indianapolis will go ahead and get at least one more run out there on the board. They're going to try to stretch it to two. There will not be a throw home, so that's going to be a two-run RBI for Eric Hosmer. He's been feeling good. He's got 3 RBIs in this game, carrying the Indianapolis offense here today. As Francisco Lindor, speaking of which, coming out here trying to do some business as well. He's going to end up bringing in another run, potentially, as if that throw was online, that might have been an out, but it was not online whatsoever. So yeah, Indianapolis really doing what they can to try to pull away from this Louisville squad. As Max Kepler, you know, he's had some fun out there on the baseball field. He has a double earlier, but how about adding a home run there as well, as Max Kepler gets his 12th home run of the season. So now Louisville is up 8-2 right now. They are, you know, in a position to go ahead and try to run away with this thing outright. You know, depending on how these next few innings go, as Abesil Garcia gonna try to run things out, and it's an error. And that error is gonna be really costly, as that could have just been a single if third baseman just would have held on to it. It's gonna be an error. And look at that, Abesil Garcia gets all the way to third base. And it just makes things too easy. Even though there's going to be an out there in right field, Charlie Blackmon just doesn't have the arm to go ahead and gun him down. So Abesil Garcia, off of the error, is going to get yet another run here for Indianapolis. As now we're in a situation here, Louisville, let's see if they can make a little bit of a comeback here. Let's see if they can get the rally caps on as Charlie Blackmon comes back into the game. He has a home run from earlier. Is this going to be the second one of the day? Yes, sir. It's gone. like a girl in a country song. The 24th home run this season for him. And Charlie Blackmon, he's certainly doing all he can to try to keep his baseball team in it. Not only in this game, but also in the divisional race as well. But no one else is making some key hits. No one else is doing any of that good stuff for, besides Charlie Blackmon on this Louisville squad. But hey, that grand slam that he had will at least go ahead and make this a little bit more competitive game. It's only a 3-run difference now as we go to the top of the 8th inning, and Louisville is really trying their best to go ahead and try to make a comeback here as we see yet another home run here for George Polanco. That will make it a 1-run difference, but actually a 2-run difference. I actually cannot count whatsoever. Math in public is not my strong suit, but Charlie Blackmon trying to save the day, keep the rally caps going, will end up grounding out to the third baseman, Fred Shaver. And Indianapolis will end up hanging on, win this game by a final score of 9-7. So they will end up extending their lead in the NL Central because of it. So one of the teams that I did end up talking about is the San Francisco Seals, and even though it might be tough for them to catch up in their division, they are still deep in the wild card race in the NL, and they need wins like this in order to propel them. They go beat the Denver Bald Eagles on the road. They win 13-2. Denver has been playing better, but they still have a long way to go in order to realistically be competitive for a playoff spot here in the future. But let's go ahead and take a look at another divisional race that's hanging around in the USBL. We have the AL West. We have the Seattle Pilots going on the road to take on the Houston Astronauts. And this is a game of big importance as well. Seattle, if they can win this game, they can at least, shallow the gap between them and Houston for the AL West lead. You don't want to go to the wild card. Let's be really honest right now. It's only like a 1-game playoff. You don't want to go into a sudden death situation. You want to have a little bit of security. So winning your division is extremely important, and Houston doing what it can to make sure that they can go ahead and try to hang on, as this one might be a triple. It will end up being a triple. Could have stood up too if he really wanted to, but JD Davis, only his 2nd triple of the entire season. It helps Houston for the first time today get runners into scoring position, as Kirsten Hira, who is in the running for MVP over the American League, does end up striking out, but they're not out of the woods yet here, as Josh Bell ends up coming to the plate here. 1 out in the bottom of the 4th inning, and look at that moonshot. It's gonna be gone like a girl in a country song. 3-run shot for Josh Bell. The 28th home run of the season for him. And Houston will end up getting on the board here. It is now 3-0. And Luis Robert, he's going to also get involved as well. He ends up, they might stretch it out to the double with the speed that he's got, and will end up doing just that. Sucks that he does end up getting a little bit stranded there, but you'll love to see the effort out there from both teams, really feeling the playoff atmosphere here in Houston right now. As you will cut into the top of the 6th inning, Rafael Devers trying to go ahead and make this, get some actual runs on the board. And this is a really nice shot out into right center field. And look at this, Devers trying to go for third. Is this going to be a potential inside the park home run? It's going to be close. He's out. Rafael Devers tries to go ahead, gets the inside the park home run. He ends up getting thrown out at home as well. It was his first out on top of it. And now Tommy Edman here tries to tie the game for the Seattle Pilots. And look at that nice hit out into left field. Does end up bringing in 1 run. And so here we go. Things get a little bit interesting here. 3-2. If Rafael Devers didn't try to go for the inside the park home run, this game would have been tied. But instead, Houston will continue to carry that lead into the 9th inning. And Alves Aldreyes, who has not gotten a single hit today, he's 0 for 4 so far, ends up going 0 for 5. And that throw out at the plate in the top of the 6th inning ends up being the ultimate difference maker. The Houston Astronauts, in a big ALS battle, win this one by a score of 3-2. So with that being said, we'll check out another team that could potentially go to the wild card game as well. The Minnesota Ducks, although granted, Minnesota, they have gotten screwed over by the fact that the Chicago Freeze are in this division. They actually might win 100 games, but something to watch out for. Jacob Miller, who's one of the custom prospects in the USBL. If you remember from the main channel, he was a custom prospect for the Texas Rangers series prior to starting the USBL. He ends up making not necessarily his actual debut, but this is the first time that we will see him, I guess, on USBL national TV, you know, for a USBL ball game. And right now, Jacob Miller's looking pretty good. You know, hasn't gone to any trouble as of yet, but Tim Castro will make sure that he goes ahead and gives him his welcome to the USBL moment. A solo shot out into left center field. It's only the 5th home run for him. He's more of a speed guy, but hey, these speed guys always know a thing or two about being able to go ahead and hit the baseball. And hey, even with that, Jacob Miller has still not been so bad so far. He's only given up 1 run against a pretty good Minnesota baseball team. So, you know, gotta give respect where respect is due, but we'll see how much longer that lasts. You know, I'm sure they're going to do their best to try to protect the young arm of Jacob Miller. He certainly does have a very bright future in the USBL right now, as he ends up giving up another hit out on the right-hand side, as looks like Minnesota will be opening up this lead against the Columbus Jets. It ends up being another 2 runs that Miller ends up giving up, but Gary Waters, he will end up striking it out to him, and Jacob Miller will end up getting out of this inning eventually. But you gotta get some run support for your young pitcher. We'll see if Jacob Miller can get some help from his offensive players. You know, see if Austin Riley can do something, and that's more than something. How about that, as a solo shot out into center field, and it is gone like a girl in a country song. Home run, and you'll love to absolutely see that. Columbus does end up at least getting 1 run on the board here. It ends up being the 6th strikeout of the day. As now, still bottom of the 5th inning, Julio Rodriguez, he is going to end up doing some window shopping. Gets outwitted by the veteran Luis Castillo. But Austin Riley at least provides some run support. But then after that, they do end up pulling Jacob Miller. It's a little bit of a confusing move for me, because Jacob Miller was not having a bad game. He only gave up a few runs at that point, and his pitch count wasn't very high either. It was only like hovering around like 85 pitches. So felt like he could have at least started the 6th inning, but that just didn't happen for whatever reason. So now the Columbus is really just starting to fall apart here. A catch that really should have been made. So Fernando Tatis Jr., he's going to end up getting home. Another run scores for Minnesota. And this is one thing that Columbus does need to work on in a nutshell. Like, you could really see it just in that one play alone. You know, they really need to work on both the team defense, as that fly ball really should have been caught. Like, you are under it, my guy. You're a professional. You gotta make that play, especially when you're trying to stay in things, and especially when you're also playing against one of the best offenses in the USBL. I mean, you could see the run score, at least among the American League. The Minnesota Ducks, coming into this game today, they came in 3rd place in the USBL right now. As now we'll go ahead and see what's going down in the bottom of the 6th inning here, as Luis Castillo is going to end up getting the strikeout there. But good at bat though overall, ends up running up the pitch count a little bit for Luis Castillo. We will see if he can go ahead and finish this inning off though, as Corey Seager will come to the plate here. 1 for 2 so far. 1 home run short of 30 home runs. If you can get the 30 home runs, that would be a good look for him overall. We'll see if Luis Castillo can go ahead and shut that down real quick though, as there's a 1-1 count, and we see the delivery. Corey Seager looking to go deep into right field, and it is gone. Home run, and the Columbus Jets are back in this game again. The 30th home run for the aforementioned Corey Seager. So Columbus is back in it, but can their bullpen get a clean inning? The last inning that we saw from this bullpen after they pull out Jacob Miller, it was not a good look, man, and made the decision to pull Jacob Miller a little bit early. Definitely not look good whatsoever. As Minnesota, they're really starting to hit around the yard all of a sudden. Two bagger for Tim Castro, who ends up getting home on the very next at bat anyways. And we see yet another score, thanks to a double from Gary Waters, his 20th RBI double this season. And then Fernando Tatis Jr., well, he ends up striking out, but, you know, you could see why this Minnesota offense is dangerous, though, when you have Tatis Jr., who's really quick, Gary Waters, who's extremely fast, and Tim Castro, who also happens to be really fast as well, and also some solid hitters throughout the lineup as well. Ronaldo Nunez, you know, he's not in the core of the order, but, I mean, 20 home runs is still pretty good. You know, nice little contributor. As Clayton Andrews comes in and pitched for Columbus as well, and he might give up yet another home run for the Columbus Jets, and that's just how the game went. You know, Jacob Miller is going to be charged with the loss, but he was the best pitcher that Columbus had out there today. They lose 11-4. So with that being said, we do have our very first team in the USBL going ahead and getting their 90th win of the season. It is the Chicago Freeze, and they do it in a massive way. They end up winning 18-6. Yes, 18 runs these guys scored on the Boston Quakers, who did try to go on a little bit of a later run, but I mean, it was barbecue chicken from the get-go. It seems like Chicago scored in almost every inning, man. It was a little impressive to see, to be honest with you. I think everyone but 2 hitters in the Chicago starting lineup had at least 2 hits, which is crazy to think about. Meanwhile, over for the Boston Quakers, you know, it's not like Boston was doing a bad job hitting the ball, but they were just, you know, crushed trying to go ahead and play some, you know, playing defense. You know, the pitching staff definitely let him down in this one. As we go ahead and see Montez of Boston, you know, gets his 11th loss of the season. He didn't even survive 2 innings. He was the starting pitcher. And then Pivetta ends up with win number 2 here as the starting pitcher for Chicago. Only managed to go 4 innings as well. So neither team really, you know, impressing with their starter. But Chicago won big, and that's the biggest thing that matters. So speaking of which, that does leave the standings here for the USBL as we're approaching, probably got 20 games left here roughly. For all of the teams here in the USBL. Starting with the AL Central, this is the Chicago Freeze's division to lose. They got a 12-game lead on the Minnesota Ducks. The magic number right now is 8. So, I mean, it will take a major collapse for the Chicago Freeze to lose the divisions and Minnesota to also go on a hot run, which, to their credit, you know, Minnesota has done pretty well. You know, they played a really good game against Columbus. And then the rest of the division just not good. Detroit and Columbus are selling, and then Nashville just fell apart. For the AL West, though, the Houston Astronauts are putting together a pretty solid campaign as well. They are 80-60 as of right now. They do have a 5.5 game lead over the Seattle Pilots, who, you know, their magic number is 17 right now to clinch the division. Seattle, they have a big series with Houston, so we'll see how that plays out, but Houston did end up winning the first game in the series, so that's something to definitely think about moving forward. San Jose, definitely a big disappointment. They were buyers at the USBL trade deadline and are under 500, and they will probably miss the playoffs here too. Over in the AL East, the Cleveland Rockers are looking pretty good, 83-58, with the Baltimore Stonecrabs trying to keep chase, the only team with a realistic chance of possibly going ahead and trying to take care of business. You know, 6 games back, but 16 games left to play, so, you know, not unreasonable. The New York Knights have a slight shot as well, but they're more of a long shot to win the division. And then there's Atlanta and Boston, you know, sitting there on the edge, you know, basically tied for last place in the AL East. In the AL wildcard, though, things are getting extremely tight, though, as this is turning essentially into a 4-team race. San Jose does have a long shot chance of making it into the wild card, but they are going to be eliminated in 15 games if they don't, light a fire under their butt. Yeah, they're 7 games out of the wild card with 15 games out. But the 4 more realistic teams right now, Minnesota would have the top wild card spot with Baltimore essentially tied with them. It's really close between these 2 teams right here. The Seattle Pilots are 2 games out. That's another thing too. They're starting to fade back a little bit. They were really close to start this episode, or at least to start the end of last episode. Now, not so much. They're starting to fall apart here in the early part of September. And the New York Knights, 2.5 games out with, roughly 19 games left to play. They got a ton of power, and they are a great defensive team. If they make the playoffs, they can be a pretty dangerous squad too. So we'll see how the AL wildcard ends up folding. Moving on over to the National League East, and the Philadelphia Patriots have taken a commanding lead over this division, 85-56. They need a really big collapse in order to lose this division. They have really pulled away here in the early portion of September. Even with the additions that the New Orleans Kings have made, they have just simply have not kept pace with the Philadelphia Patriots. So both them and the Washington Senators will have to go ahead and hope for a wild card, with the Jacksonville Suns and Charlotte Cougars likely left out of the playoffs for sure. The NL Central, though, on the other hand, this is an interesting division just because of how mediocre this division is. The Indianapolis Indians are currently on top right now, 73-70, so roughly 20 games left to play here. 3 games over 500. You guys see over in the American wild card, at least to say the least, this wouldn't even be a playoff team in the American League. And that's the same thing for, the NL wild card. If the Indianapolis Indians were in any other division right now, they would not even be in the playoffs if the season ended today. But because of how bad this division is, Indianapolis is currently on top. But that being said, this could get really interesting, though. Louisville is only 3.5 games out. The Memphis Bobcats, who started the season out as the worst rated team in baseball, they're up to 28th now, so they got a little better. And the Aurora Lightning, all 78-73, less than 4 games out. This division could get really interesting. We could have a really close race here in the NL Central when this season is all said and done. Now, in the NL West, meanwhile, the LA Saints are a much better baseball team. They are 80-62. The only team that they're worried about for the division crown at this point is the San Francisco Seals. They are 5.5 games out with the elimination number set at 16 right now. So they still, can do some things. They are on a 4-game winning streak, which is helping out the cause for sure. Can they catch LA? I don't know. Maybe not, but San Francisco would put themselves in a nice spot, at least for the wild card. San Diego Whales are a long shot to win this division, and then I think Phoenix and Denver, you can kind of stick and fork in them at this point. So meanwhile, for the National League wild card, this is what it's looking like right now. Currently, first wild card spot would be going for the New Orleans Kings. They would be hosting the wild card playoff game. But for the second wildcard spot, we actually have a tie right now. Yes, there is currently a tie for the second wildcard. The San Francisco Seals and the Washington Senators as well are tied for that second and final wildcard spot. It's literally going to go down to the last game, it feels like. And they're also the only teams in the NL wildcard that have a, winning record as of right now. But that being said, they're not the only team that has a shot. There's a lot of teams in the NL wildcard that have at least a little bit more than a long shot to make it into the playoffs still. Got San Diego Whales, got the Jacksonville Suns, the Louisville Colonials, the Memphis Bobcats, the Aurora Lightning are in here too. Shoot, the Charlotte Cougars, arguably the best last place team in baseball when it comes to, where they are in the division. If they can get hot somehow towards the end, they can springboard their way into the playoffs. So it feels really open, but it's going to come down to these three teams right here for the last 2 playoff spots. So guys, that's gonna wrap up the early September episode. Next episode will likely be the last regular season episode that we will have here in the USBL before we go into the very first USBL playoffs, here on the channel. So I'm super excited about that. If you're excited about it as well, I would encourage you to smash that like button, as well as hit subscribe if you do happen to be brand new as well. It is for free, and you can always unsubscribe if you're not feeling me, but it does help grow the channel a little bit. So with that being said, I hope you're all out there having a good one. Take care, y'all.